Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Wednesday, and you are happily tuned into the I'm Making It Happen radio show on the Reef 103.5 FM with yours truly, Nykole Tyson. And we are here on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And on I'm Making It Happen, we discuss how we can make it happen in our minds, bodies, finances, business, and culture, despite the inevitable and not so present challenges. And that's to ultimately shift our mindset and allow us to realize that we have the power to improve and maneuver every and any situation. And today I'm going to continue the conversation I had from last week that I didn't get into in regards to turning challenges into opportunities. And so that's the conversation for today. But of course, I want to say good morning to everyone in the USVI, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, the British Virgin Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, and anywhere you are in the Caribbean. I know specifically Dominica's tuned in. Anywhere else in the Caribbean, thanks so much for tuning in, as well as all those listening live on rebroadcasting.com from the East to West Coast. We appreciate you. And so, and also good morning to all those watching live on Facebook at I'm Making It Happen. Please do like and share. And so, as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about ways that we make it happen, and that we always have some challenge, right? This is just how life is. We got a downpour rain, and sometimes you can anticipate the forecast, and then other times you're like, where the heck did all this rain come from? Am I the only one that didn't know it was going to rain like this? Did anyone else know this was happening? And I've actually had the conversation when I think last week was a downpour, and I still was out there getting stuff done in the rain. And I asked some individuals in an establishment I was in, did you know it was going to rain this much? Some knew it and some didn't, right? So sometimes we can predict, expect, anticipate, and other times it's just a shock. Same thing with our lives. We're caught outside and unprepared. No umbrella, no water boots or rain boots. Okay, just out there, and it can be related to life itself, like I mentioned. One part of St. Croix, and then this is life too, right? One part of St. Croix is pouring, the east or the middle. But it said it's dry. No one knows this was happening on one side of the island. We know many years ago, it was pouring in Frederickstead, flooded out. It was a very unexpected event. And from I think they said the what is it, the highway was flooded out. I don't know how true. They said jet skis was on the highway rescuing people. But it was a lot of rain, and it had people stuck in west, right? But nobody in east knew what was happening. And then just last week, people I spoke to in west didn't know like mid island was pouring, but in east was dry and whatnot. So it's vice versa. Sometimes we experience the thunderstorms on our own. Like I said, it could be in west, east, mid island. Nobody else on the island knows. And the same thing that happens with us in our own lives. We can experience thunderstorms in our own lives. Sometimes it's with others. If it's like a family event, somebody passing, something like that. Like many of us or like right now, layoffs in the States. So there's that's a thunderstorm. But then most times in our life, the thunderstorms is either you, yourself, or you, me, myself, and I, right? So that's something like that we could relate to, especially with this rain. But then it always clears up. It always has a sunshiny day at the end of it. And so that's what we're going to talk about, turning obstacles into opportunities, turning the rain, knowing that the sun is going to come out. And then also the rain, it waters the plants. It gives life to so many different animals out there right now. The deer, the deer suffer the most when we don't have as much rain. And many of the other animals, wild animals out there, they need the rain. And so there is a benefit to having the thunderstorms um, in nature and then in our life. Because even though it feels like a traumatic situation, upsetting, challenging, whatever you want to call frustrating, if you look at it, there's always opportunity. And so one thing we can all agree on is that the only constant is change in nature and in our life, right? So things shift, people evolve, and circumstances change, whether we like it or not. That is life. And the key is not to resist it, but to understand it. And change can be difficult, no doubt, as we mentioned, but it's often the very thing that pushes us to grow. And if you look at it, and I can look at it in many areas of my life, the challenging parts actually push me to do things. Challenging individuals actually made me go a different route where and be calm and do things that surprise myself, right? And so that was really positive, and I can name it throughout my life. from young to the age that I am now. And so just knowing how to pivot and not letting yourself get stopped or stuck. That's the most important thing. You can have the rain, and sometimes your car gets stuck in the mud. Yourself gets stuck in a for a certain amount of time. But to know that it will dry up and you will drive off, you will get out that mud, or you will put in the effort, the activity to make yourself to propel yourself forward, and that is what life is about. And so making it happen isn't easy. And so people, like I said, mentioned in the show in the past, people are like, what are you doing? Even recently somebody asked me that. It kind of is annoying because it's like, what I'm making it happen have to do with you? If you take it for yourself, what are you making happen, right? But I do respond at times and I say, you have no idea what I'm making happen, but this is not even about me. It's about you. It doesn't say Nykole making it happen. When you say it, when I have people say it on my TV show, at the end of the show, it's never my name. It is the possessive form for that individual, personal possessive, you know. And so it's what are you making happen? Um, and that it's not even about what are you making happen. It's like that you can make it happen. And that's the whole point of it, is to inspire individuals that you can make it happen. It's not if you're going to make it happen. That's not what it says. It says I'm making it happen. And so no matter what comes our way, you're going to make it happen because there's no other choice. And there is a choice. There's no other I would say there's no other choice for me. Because the only other choice is just to lay down and cry and just not have any movements or results. And so it's just like, okay, well, what is the next steps? And so that's what making it happen is about. We're going to talk about that and that turning. And most of the thing that making it happen, or I'm making it happen slogan really speaks to is the challenges in our life. Like, so what when you say I'm making it happen, it means that regardless of what's showing up in my life in this moment, that you're going to find a way. And that's what I inspire you every single day to do. I'm here in the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, wherever you hear this, watching and listening, that you make it happen no matter what shows up. And there's always opportunity to improve, even though there are obstacles. Okay. So as I mentioned, the only constant is change. And so don't let challenges keep you down. So when you're in the middle of a tough situation, it can feel like it's never going to get better. As I mentioned, you might even feel stuck. But I want you to hear me when I say don't stay stuck. No matter what you're facing, you have the power to move forward. It's not about ignoring your struggles. It is about knowing that they don't define you, me, we. There's just a moment in time. It's a chapter in your book. And nobody wants to feel challenges and obstacles and disappointments and frustrations and whatever other word that you can apply to this. But it is what it is. And so sometimes the hardest thing is just taking that first step, regrouping, looking at your goals again, and then, plotting out another step, another way to make it happen. So whether it's reaching out for help, like I mentioned last week, or finding a solution, or simply giving yourself the grace to take it one day at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out. And that is one thing that we don't learn in school. Because when you're in school, well, I remember when I was in school, I don't know about now, but when I was in school, it's like, okay, you need to know what you're going to be, do at 17, maybe you graduated, 16, 17, 18, whatever age you graduated, and know your major and what you want to be, and and it's like, really, realistically, is that the way it is now? Because you can have so many different professions in your lifetime. Once when I met Kwame Fume, for those who may know that, and he was a former president of the NAACP convention, and I actually asked somebody about it recently, and they didn't even know who he was. But I said I knew of him because of my parents. My father used to watch the news a lot, so I remember seeing him on TV, Kwame Fume. He actually spoke at UVI. I think he was one of the speakers for the graduation one year when I was here, and I was able to see him, and he remembered me. But I met him on a plane one time, actually in first class, coming from South Carolina for my uncle. And I saw him. I was a freshman in college, and I was sitting in first class, and he came on the plane, and I asked him. Well, I saw his face, and I said to myself, I know his face from somewhere. And my mind like it was like a robot, like a computer, and I'm like thinking, where can I see him? Where can I see him? And then when he was sleeping, we're in the air for many hours now. I was going from South Carolina to Maryland because I went to college in Maryland, and it dawned on me, oh my God, I know who that is. That is Kwesi Nkrumah, the NAACP president. And when I turned around to see him, because he sat behind me, I said, he was sleeping, and I said, oh my God, he's sleeping. But then I thought to myself, so I turned around, and then I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to get this chance again. So I woke him up. I turned around and I nudged his leg. And I'm like, I'm so sorry to wake you up, but I've been trying to figure out where I know your face from. And are you Kwesi Nkrumah? And he said, yes, I am. And I was like, oh my God, it's so great to meet you. And I turned back around. And then he went back to sleep. And minutes later, I'm like, oh Lord, I got so many questions. And I turned back around and I said, I'm so sorry to wake you up again, but I have a question for you. And he's like, sure. And he's like, so he woke up again. Wasn't annoyed. He didn't ask anyway. And I asked him, well, how did you know what you wanted to be? Like, how did you know you wanted to do what you're doing right now? Because I was so bewildered. I was like really stressing about what I wanted and trying to please people in regards to my profession and my interests. And trying to figure things out when I was in freshman in college. And so he told me like I didn't know what I wanted to. He didn't know what he wanted to do like until he was like 40, and I thought he was ludicrous. I was like, that don't even make any sense. He's like, I said that for real. That I don't believe that. He said, yes, I didn't know. So he didn't know, and I was like, well, how is that? And he told me he went through a succession of like failures and changes of major and jobs and this and that. And then he fell into different things, like made him became where he was at that time. And he told me, you're going to know, like he told me like your mid 30s, you will know what you really want to do. And I really thought at like 18 at the time. Was it 18, 17, 18? I think I just turned, no, I wasn't even 18 yet. I was 17. So I asked him like, so then he was like, yeah, you won't know until like your mid 30s. And I thought he was crazy because I grew up thinking that I'm supposed to have it figured out, right? And he was right. That when I saw him in here in UVI years later, no, and I lived in Maryland, so I used to see him at AFRAM and different things and say hi and whatnot. But been being on St. Court for many years, and I think he remembered me and he remembered the conversation. I guess he would have remembered a young girl waking him up many times on the plane. But I told him he was right, and I appreciated his. I never forgot his words of encouragement and advice. And so I bring that back to this: is that we learn that we have to have it all figured out, especially when we're going through challenges, and we're not trained in how to deal with challenges and how to keep moving forward and progressing. And no matter the things that happen, it could be in our personal lives or people causing it. But it's just like it is life, and I think that's one of the things that need to be taught in school is dealing with challenges in life and how to move forward. And it's not the end all be all, and it might not be the way that you envision really, but there is a way, and it will still turn out. It will still work out as long as you keep putting your foot in front, one foot in front of the next. All right. And so and I reiterate, you don't have to have it all figured out. And actually, none of us have it all figured out. Even the most person that seems to have it figured out. You have a way of doing things that have success, but in other areas of your life, you don't have it all figured out if you really are honest with yourself. And so, we all are just figuring things out as we go in relationships and in our businesses, in our careers, in our family structure, in various types of relationships that we have, is figuring out, trial and error. And that hopefully that you're putting, when you find the trial and then you figure out your error, when you experience the trial, you figure out the error, and that you do apply, better ways of interacting, communicating, and moving forward, whether it be it yourself or people, and the like. Okay, so it's one thing to recognize a challenge. So we're going to talk about implementing solutions. So we talk about so the thunderstorms come. I play the music. You can see clearly now. The rain has come, it's gone, but the rain causes growth, and the thunderstorm, the rain in our life causes growth. And if you look at it like that, even the worst of it, like I mentioned, the worst of it is losing somebody in death, and I've experienced that. I'm gonna cry, but so even there, you can look at seeing how you can improve and what lessons you can apply to yourself. Because if you're alive still, there's no reason to stop. And so It's one thing to recognize you have a challenge, but how do you handle it? How do you turn it into an opportunity? And so here are some things. You gotta be in action. Action is essential. If you just lay down and stay in your bed crying, you're gonna feel hopeless. You're not gonna move forward. So you need to be implementing action items, action skills that will help you handle the situation. I've mentioned it before. You know, getting up, pulling yourself out of bed, making sure it sounds so minute and so minor, but it's not. You know, drinking your water. You know, vitamins, exercise. Those are the things that keep you mentally stable. You have your endorphins, and then you're fueling your body just like how you fuel in your car. You cannot drive your car without having fuel. It will stop. It will break down, and it will not tell you when. It just you don't have to be looking at that fuel signal to know you got to put in fuel, or else at some point you're going to break down. The same thing with us. You got to put in the fuel in yourself. That is, your exercise, your vitamins, eating properly, water. Those are the things that's going to keep you equal your equilibrium, keep you up. And then moving forward in regards to other ways to take action, right? And so that's going to help you to take the next positive steps. And it might be next thing having a conversation with somebody and helping you to restructure your thinking and other steps that you could take that you're not even thinking about. And then because that's so seeking advice, or even planning things out, or changing things, removing things that aren't serving you. That also is part of implementing a solution. So you got to take a moment to ask yourself, what's in my control? You've heard me say that before. I still focus on things that's not out of my control. And usually when I start to get anxious and whatever, I'm focusing on thinking about what's not in my control, right? And so this is something like implementing solutions. What is in your control? What can you do to make the situation better? Whether it's having a difficult conversation, setting a boundary, or seeking professional help. Action is always your key. Um, and sometimes you do need to take a break. Like I said, you do need to take that one, that time for yourself. Maybe take a nap. Maybe take a couple days. But at some point, you got to start saying, okay, today I'm getting up. I'm going to do this. Even if it's just one positive thing towards whatever you want to achieve. You do that one thing. And then it will snowball. It will start to get, you will start to increase your capacity to, deal with more and more. So life doesn't get better, you get better. And I think that's a Jim Rohn quote. I'm going to put in here, I'm not sure. But either one of those personal development gurus, it doesn't get easier, but you get better, right? And so make sure you're nurturing yourself, taking time for the things that recharge you, whether that's taking a walk, journaling, meditating, or just getting some quiet time. Self care is not selfish, it's essential to your ability to handle life's challenges. And that's an everyday thing. And so we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about understanding others and your role in conflict, right? And so, don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this short break. Okay, welcome back. This is not making it happen. So, great caller. Thanks for calling. And either even though it's off the air, I do appreciate those that do tune in and make contact. So I look forward to having more conversations with that individual. And so as I'm mentioning, yeah, the thing is when we have challenges in our life, we have to pivot. And so that's really important. Is like, okay, if you're gonna have the rain, then what are you gonna do with the rain? Especially with the farmers looking at that. What is the best crops now for this? Not to say, oh Lord, it's keep raining and now it's flooding out, and you keep growing the same thing and it keeps flooding out. It doesn't make any sense. So now you got to transition. You got to pivot. What can I do now with what's happening? And that's the same thing in our life. So farmers, kudos to you. Those that are looking at other crops, I know that I think rice is something that can withstand rain. And like I'm not even sure what other crops are, but Grantley was on my show, a few months back, and we discussed that, and so I'm happy to hear that. So that's the same thing now. Like you have to transition and also pivot when things are not going as we planned. All right. Um. So now I wanted to talk about. Get back to my notes about conflicts, right? And so yeah, what do we need to look at in regards to understanding others and our role in a conflict? So sometimes it might be a situation where you have to work with individuals and you have to interact with people. I mean, that's like it was boring when COVID was happening, right? Everybody was inside. I remember driving and being out and being like, "There's nobody out here." And now when everybody's out here, I'm upset because there's so much traffic, right? But then there was a time when it was like, "Oh, where's the people? I could see people." And so it's like a catch 22. You know, you have people and then you're going to have conflict. And so we're going to talk about something that can make a difference in how you handle challenges and how others treat you. Never also talk about how we treat ourselves. But here's the truth: how people treat you is often not about you at all. And it's hard to think about that. I mentioned this years ago on my show, even before I really even understood it myself. But I knew it is that not always the people, how they interact with you is always about you. They might make you feel like it's about you, but it really is not most times about you. Especially if you know you're not in, not a cause of certain things. It has to go back to, okay, well, it's the other individual. I don't know, whatever the insecurities are, whatever issues they may be having, and you find it in the workplace a lot. And I find it more so when I was in the government here. Now, even when I was in the States, um, in my last position, I did, yeah, it was a situation. It's like, you looked at it, it was like that person, and your city looked at it, and they did get what was coming to them. But in that company, but it is basically, it's not always about you. Okay, welcome back. Listen to I'm Making It Happen and with Nykole Tyson. And we're talking about, turning challenges into opportunities and focusing on what we have control over. I hear the conversations and the frustrations about politicians and all that kind of stuff. I don't focus on that. Like, there are people that are being successful everywhere in life, no matter what Trump is doing, no matter what, what's happening within politics and all the kind of things. There are people making it happen still. And why is that? Because they're focusing on what they have control over. So if you see something that can be better for the children, let's create something. All right. If you don't see it, like I always talk about it, I don't just say it just to say it. If you don't see something happening, create it. Be the change. um like every day we hear the same thing on the radio of people, and I've been hearing it since I was a child. So when are we going to do something together, or create something? Is an opportunity. When you see a loophole or something that's not happening in one area, create a business. Use that opportunity to make income, or make something out of it. So that's what I'm about. I do still say, lobby the politicians and those things, but let's focus on what we can do, right? And so that will always be my thought process on this. Okay, so like I wanted to talk about when people are, when you're having conflicts, and some of the reasons why some things are not moving is because of egos in positions. It's because of a lot of things like that. And so we have to focus on ourselves first and outside of anything else. Even within our own spaces, you might have issues within our own families and our own situations that are not that are preventing us from moving forward. And so what we see, like, as a macro, is happening on a smaller level. All right. So it doesn't just happen out there huge. It's happening within minor, in our own influence or circles. And so we have to get right with ourselves within our own circles, and then it widens out to the wider community, And so a lot of times what you're seeing, a lack of movements, even though there should be the resources, is because egos. I seen it. Not people not wanting to give credit where credit is due, or putting things down that maybe is a good idea because they don't like the person. It should be about the people, not about any one person. And it's not supposed to be an I, like at the end of this, all about you, me, we. At the end of the day, we're supposed to be looking at what's the whole advantage. And I agree with the individual, like what we should be looking at for the future of our children. That's the whole thing about, looking at it for the stance of our country, which is the U.S. Virgin Islands. We are U.S., but it is our country. And that these are the things that will help us move forward. And when these other countries and islands are moving forward, is because they're looking at the long term. And and I do know they have their own, politic issues and whatever issues they may be having. You see it in the news, but overall, the results show for themselves within the country and how they're progressing, and that overall they're looking for the betterment of everyone. but despite the whatever internal conflicts that they may be experiencing. And so, and then everybody, works together. Like there is not just a waste management, but everybody picks up the garbage around their areas. And there's not just, one, person thinking about, agriculture. Everybody's pushing and moving forward to do certain things, or donating, or, putting the resources together. And so that's what I'm talking about, like, having, what's in your control, right? If you have people that are sound mind that you can talk to and it can influence and get something together, movements, then great. And or I could be a part of that, because I am a part of conversations to, to move things, as well, or just to create something. I'm all about that. So you can always contact me, like the person that just called me, during, and I took a break and took the call offline. I'm always open to having conversations and seeing how we can work together in achieving aspects. But talking about, before the time goes, which has gone so quickly, these past times I've done this solo. Next week I am supposed to have a guest, and so I do get like the opportunity to talk to you directly on certain things that I'm thinking about. But let's see, thinking about when you deal with difficult situations, when someone is being difficult, take a step back and reflect. See how you can contribute, could have contributed. So now segueing back into what I initially was talking about in regards to, um, conflicts and our role and understanding individuals in the last couple minutes that I have. But in terms of individuals and we deal with, that's life. We're going to deal with people, and that's what makes life interesting, is that the people we interact with and we meet. It would be boring if we didn't have that, right? Didn't have people, right? And if everybody was like us, it would be boring too. So, and we learned that during COVID. But then when it comes back to reality, you're dealing with individuals, you're like, oh my Lord. But this is how we can look at it. Not is it always your fault? And that's what I had to learn. But people will make it seem like it's you. You have to really take a inventory of yourself though, and see how you may contribute to something, how you may be able to, what's the word? I can't think of it on right now, but give and take, compromise. Yeah, compromise is the word I'm thinking. How you may have to compromise on some things. Looking at it from somebody else's perspective and seeing it their way, and then kind of, okay, working with it. And if it's not working, then having that conversation, but taking inventory upon yourself and seeing, like, how can you improve, how can you make this interaction um better. And then not just saying, okay, one day, 1 minute, and then you're like, you throw your hands up if it doesn't work. No, it has to be consistent, right? And if you see you're being consistent and you're doing your best and you're really being conscious of your own self, and this individual or individuals are still having issues, then you have to say, okay, take a step back, reflect. We already talked about, okay, could you have contributed to the situation? And recognize how your actions or reactions may have impacted a conflict. you know those are things that you can look at, because it's not only your actions but your reactions. All right, it's not always some you have control more than you think. Trying to have control of yourself, over control of your reactions. But if the behavior continues, even though if you're really honest with yourself and you see, okay, you've done your best in all parts, that your reactions, your actions, whatever, you've done your best, then you have to realize, okay, maybe it's more than just about you. And maybe it's the other person or people, right? And their own struggles, their own way of seeing things, their own lens that they're looking at life through. You don't have to internalize every behavior that somebody exhibits. Instead, you can recognize it for what it is and move forward. And then let it go and do your best and leave the rest, as my grandmother would say. She says it all the time to me. And it's easier said than done, but it is a true fact. You do your best and then leave the rest, because, like my mom says, life is too short. And it makes no sense holding on to things for people, especially if you don't have control over it. So what we have learned today, life challenges don't have to keep you down. Change is inevitable, and growth often comes from adapting to it. It most times comes from adapting to our surroundings. And the key is to take action, 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 action. That's the only way to keep moving forward, is to take action. The only person laying down that can't move, those are 6 feet under. So take care of yourselves and understand that out, and then also looking at it and understanding that people's actions towards you are not only people's, and understand that people's actions towards you are often reflections of their own internal battles. You have no idea, and I wouldn't even tell you to subscribe to figuring it out. But everybody has to have their own monitoring and filtering and taking inventory of themselves. And it's not always about the other person. So all of us need to be taking inventory of how we impact others in our surroundings, how we react, what we say, what we don't say. We're very aware of how people can react to us, but how are you reacting to the outside world? You know? Yeah, so that's what I'll say about that. So remember, your challenges are just stepping stones, not roadblocks. Take the opportunity to learn, grow, and keep moving forward. And as I always say to you, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the caller. I do appreciate your feedback. I do see what you're saying. I don't want to dismiss his concern. I do appreciate the concern and interest of everyone for our community. My only ask is that we look at how we individuals can take control of our space and what we can contribute. Because if we keep pointing fingers, how many fingers are pointed back at us, right? You learn that from a child. So let's keep making it happen. Thank you for tuning in with me today. I encourage you to take one step forward this week today, no matter how small it may seem. And as always, I leave you with this: you are capable of making it happen. I'll see you guys next week. Oh, definitely want to remind you of Colors Furniture. 7 day open 7 days a week in Peters Rest and Tutu Park Mall, St. Croix, St. Thomas, Peters Rest, St. Croix, and have all of your living room, dining room, kitchen, bedroom items, as well as decorative items. They give back to the community, so make sure that you support them as well, because they support a lot in the community that you have no idea of. That's Colors Furniture, as well as Quality Auto Parts, also open 7 days a week and located near Sunny Isles. They have all your quality auto parts, as is in their name. And so I'll see you guys next week, same time, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on next week, Wednesday. Keep pushing through all those challenges and turning them into opportunities. Have an amazing rest of the day and the week. As I mentioned, we'll be back again on next week, Wednesday, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. As I always say, if you don't see something happening, create it, be the change. And until next time, keep thinking outside the box, calling outside the lines. And remember, it's about you, me, we. So make it happen.